My name is Jenny, and 6 months ago, I was convinced my life was over. I was standing in a courtroom wearing a white suit I'd bought at a thrift store because I couldn't afford anything else. My soon-to-be ex-husband Brad sat across from me, practically glowing with confidence. He wore a new expensive watch I'd never seen before. His lawyer, a shark in a $1,000 suit, looked bored. The judge peered over his glasses at Brad. "Mr. Brad Jennings, you are under oath." "Do you swear that the financial disclosure form you submitted to this court lists all marital assets, income, and property?" Brad didn't even hesitate. He looked the judge dead in the eye and said, "Yes, Your Honor. Everything is listed. I'm broke. She can have the house and the debt." He turned to me with this smile. Not a happy smile. A cruel one. Like he'd already won something I didn't know about yet. The judge started to speak, but I raised my hand. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibit A." I slid a photocopy of a lottery ticket across the table. Brad's face went from smug to white in 2 seconds flat. "This is a winning lottery ticket for $50 million, I said calmly. "Purchased with marital funds 3 days before my husband filed for divorce." He hid it in his bowling shoe. The courtroom went silent. Before we dive into how this all unfolded, if you love stories about karma hitting hard, hit that subscribe button right now. You won't believe how this ends. Let me take you back to the beginning, back to when I still believed in us. My name is Jenny Carter. I'm 29 years old, and for the past 7 years, I've been married to Brad. When we met, he was charming, funny. He talked about dreams, opening his own business, traveling the world, building something together. But somewhere along the way, those dreams turned into excuses. We lived in a small 2-bedroom house on Maple Street. The kind of house that needs constant repairs but never gets them because there's never enough money. The roof leaked when it rained. The water heater made sounds like it was dying. The front steps were rotting. I worked double shifts at Romano's Diner downtown, breakfast shift, then straight into dinner service. My feet ached constantly. I smelled like grease and coffee no matter how many showers I took. But we needed the money. Someone had to pay the bills. Brad worked part-time at a warehouse, 20 hours a week, maximum. He'd come home, throw his jacket on the couch, crack open a beer, and turn on his PlayStation every single night. "I'm tired, Jenny," he'd say when I asked him to help with dishes. "I worked today." 4 hours. He worked 4 hours while I worked 16. Our credit cards were maxed out. We owed $11,000 across 3 cards. The interest alone was killing us. I'd lie awake at night doing math in my head, trying to figure out how to stretch $300 across groceries, gas, utilities, and minimum payments. Brad didn't seem to care. He'd order takeout on his days off. "We gotta eat," he'd say, shrugging, as if the $40 for pizza and wings didn't matter. "Brad, we can't afford this," I'd say, my voice breaking from exhaustion. "You're always so negative, Jenny. Can't you just relax for once?" Relax. While I worked myself to the bone and he played video games with his headset on, shouting at strangers on the internet until 2 in the morning. I should have left him years ago. I know that now. But I kept thinking he'd change. That the man I married was still in there somewhere, buried under the laziness and the excuses. I was wrong. Everything changed 3 months ago. October 15th. It was a Tuesday night. I'd just gotten home from my second shift. My uniform smelled like fried onions and my lower back was screaming. I walked into our living room and found Brad on the couch, as usual, with a beer in one hand and his phone in the other. But something was different. He was watching the TV intently. Not a game, not a show. The local news. And the winning numbers for tonight's Mega Millions jackpot are 4, 17, 23, 31, 42, and the Mega Ball, 9. The jackpot stands at $50 million. If you have the winning ticket, you have 180 days to claim your prize. Brad's eyes were glued to the screen. He wasn't blinking. His beer hung forgotten in his hand. "You playing the lottery now?" I asked, dropping my purse on the counter. He jumped like I'd shot him. "What? No. I mean, yeah, I bought a ticket last week, just for fun. Obviously didn't win." He laughed. But it sounded forced, fake. I was too tired to care. "Well, dinner's in the fridge if you want to heat it up. I'm going to bed." "Yeah, sure." "Good night." I trudged upstairs, peeled off my uniform, and collapsed into bed. I was asleep in minutes. I woke up around 2 in the morning because I heard something. A sound from downstairs, like someone moving around. I got up quietly and crept to the top of the stairs. The bathroom light was on. I could see the glow under the door, and I could hear Brad's voice. He was whispering to someone. "No, she doesn't know. She was at work when I bought it." I checked 3 times. The numbers match perfectly. I know. 50 million. Yeah, I'm going to wait a few days, then I'll file. She won't suspect anything. My blood ran cold. I stood there frozen, my hand gripping the banister so hard my knuckles turned white. Who was he talking to? And what didn't I know? The bathroom door opened. I quickly ducked back into the bedroom and slid under the covers, my heart pounding. Brad came back to bed a few minutes later. He didn't say anything, just lay down on his side, facing away from me. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning, Wednesday, Brad was different. He woke up early, something he never did. He was cheerful, whistling in the shower, making coffee, smiling. "Morning, babe," he said when I came downstairs. He never called me babe anymore. "Morning," I said cautiously. He poured himself a cup of coffee and stood there, looking at me with this weird expression, like he was seeing me for the first time, or maybe for the last time. "Listen, Jenny," he said slowly. "I've been thinking about us." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He set down his coffee mug. "I don't think this is working anymore. You and me. I think we've grown apart." I stared at him. "Grown apart?" "Brad, what are you talking about? We want different things. You're always stressed about money, always working, always tired. I can't do this anymore. I think we should get a divorce." The room spun. "A divorce? Are you serious right now?" "I've already talked to a lawyer," he said calmly. Too calmly. "We can do this quick and easy. No fighting. I don't want anything from you. You can keep the house, the car, everything. I just want out." "Keep the house that was falling apart, the house with negative equity because we owed more on the mortgage than it was worth?" "Brad, I don't understand." "There's nothing to understand, Jenny. It's over. I'll have the papers drawn up by Friday. If you sign quickly, we can be done in 30 days. Clean break." He grabbed his jacket and keys. "I'm going to stay at my brother's place for a while. Give you some space." And just like that, he walked out the door. I stood in the kitchen, stunned, trying to process what just happened. 7 years of marriage, and he ended it in 5 minutes over a cup of coffee. That night, I called my best friend Sarah. I was crying so hard I could barely talk. "He just left," I sobbed. "He said we've grown apart. He said he wants a quick divorce and I can keep the house." "Wait, he's giving you the house?" Sarah asked. "The house you guys are underwater on? The house that needs a new roof? Yeah, he said he doesn't want anything. There was a pause. Jenny, that doesn't make sense. Brad's never given up anything in his life without a fight. Something's wrong. What do you mean? I mean, why would he suddenly want a divorce out of nowhere? And why would he give you everything? Guys like Brad don't do that. They take. They don't give. She was right. Brad had fought me over a $50 blender during an argument last year. Now he was giving me a house. You need to find out what he's hiding, Sarah said, because he's definitely hiding something. The divorce papers arrived on Friday, just like Brad promised, hand-delivered by a process server who apologized for interrupting my morning. I sat at the kitchen table and read through them. It was all there, exactly as Brad had said. He was giving me the house, the car, and taking on half the credit card debt. In return, I had to sign within 7 days for an expedited, uncontested divorce. There was a handwritten note paperclipped to the front page. Jenny, just sign it. Let's not drag this out. You'll be happier without me. Be happier without him, maybe. But something about this whole thing felt wrong. I thought about what Sarah said, about Brad hiding something. Then I remembered the phone call, the one I'd overheard at 2 a.m. She doesn't know. I checked 3 times. 50 million. I'm going to wait a few days, then I'll file. My hands started shaking. The lottery, the winning numbers on TV, Brad's weird reaction, his sudden happiness the next morning, the divorce papers 3 days later. Oh my God, Brad won the lottery, and he was trying to divorce me before I found out. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the state lottery website. I searched for recent winners. There it was. Mega Millions jackpot, October 15th, $50,000. One winning ticket sold at Quick Stop on Riverside Avenue. Winner has not yet claimed prize. Riverside Avenue. That was 2 blocks from Brad's warehouse job. I felt sick. Physically sick. This man, the man I'd worked myself to exhaustion for, the man I'd sacrificed everything for, had won $50 million and decided the best course of action was to dump me and keep it all for himself. Not split it, not celebrate together, not pay off our debt and start fresh. No. He wanted to erase me from his life entirely so he wouldn't have to share a single cent. I sat there in that kitchen, surrounded by bills and dirty dishes and 7 years of broken dreams, and something inside me shifted. I wasn't sad anymore. I was angry. No, I was furious, and I was going to make him pay. I didn't confront him. That's the first thing you need to understand. Every cell in my body wanted to call Brad, scream at him, tell him I knew what he'd done. But I didn't. Because Sarah's words kept echoing in my head. Guys like Brad don't give. They take. If Brad was trying to hide $50 million from me, he had a plan. And if I confronted him now, he'd just adjust that plan. He'd find a way to twist the story, to make me look crazy, to protect his precious lottery ticket. No, I needed to be smarter than him. So instead, I did something I'd never done before in my entire life. I called in sick to work. Then I made an appointment with a divorce attorney. The law office of Patricia Chen was in a small building downtown, sandwiched between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. The waiting room smelled like old carpet and coffee. I sat there clutching my purse, my leg bouncing nervously, until a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense haircut called my name. Jenny Carter? Yes, that's me. Patricia Chen's office was small but organized. Law books lined the walls. Her desk was covered in neat stacks of folders. She gestured for me to sit. So, she said, folding her hands on her desk. You said on the phone this was urgent. What's going on? I took a deep breath. My husband filed for divorce 3 days ago. He's offering me everything, the house, the car, and he wants me to sign immediately for a quick, uncontested divorce. Patricia raised an eyebrow. And that seems suspicious to you? Very. Because 4 days ago, I overheard him on the phone talking about $50 million and saying I didn't know something. And 3 days ago, someone won a $50 million lottery jackpot at a gas station 2 blocks from his work. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Do you have proof he won? No. Not yet. But everything adds up. The timing, his behavior, the sudden divorce, him giving up assets he'd normally fight for. Where do you think he'd keep the ticket? I don't know. Somewhere in the house, probably. He moved out to his brother's place, but most of his stuff is still there. Patricia was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Okay, here's what you need to understand about marital assets, she said. Any lottery ticket purchased during the marriage with marital funds is considered joint property. If he won that jackpot while you were still married, you're entitled to half, at minimum. At minimum? She looked up at me with something that might have been a smile. Did your husband disclose this lottery ticket in his divorce filing? No. He listed the house, the cars, our debt, and that's it. Then he's committing fraud. And here's where it gets interesting. She leaned forward. In this state, if one spouse intentionally hides assets during a divorce, especially high-value assets, the court can award the wronged spouse up to 100% of the hidden asset as a penalty. My heart started racing. 100%? Yes, it's called a fraudulent concealment penalty. The law is designed to punish people who lie to the court. But here's the catch. You have to let him lie first. What do you mean? If you confront him now, before the divorce proceedings, he can claim he was going to disclose it later, or that he forgot, or that he was confused. But if you wait until he's under oath in front of a judge, and he swears that he's disclosed all assets, and then you produce proof that he hit a $50 million lottery ticket? She smiled. That's perjury. That's fraud. And that's when we can ask the judge to award you the entire jackpot. I felt dizzy. The entire thing. Every penny, but only if we can prove he deliberately hid it and lied under oath. So here's what you need to do. She started writing on her pad. First, find that ticket. Don't take it, don't move it, just photograph it where it is. Document everything. Second, don't let him know you suspect anything. Keep playing the heartbroken wife. Let him think he's winning. Third, hire me officially so everything you tell me is protected by attorney-client privilege. And fourth, she looked up at me with steel in her eyes. Let him hang himself. I left Patricia's office with a plan and a retainer agreement I could barely afford, $3,000 up front. I put it on my last credit card, the one I'd been saving for emergencies. If this wasn't an emergency, nothing was. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. I had to find that lottery ticket. But where would Brad hide it? Our house wasn't big. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room. I'd cleaned every inch of that place 100 times. If there was a lottery ticket hidden somewhere, I would have found it by now. Unless he'd hidden it somewhere I wouldn't normally look. Somewhere personal. Somewhere that was his space, not mine. The garage. Brad's corner of the garage was a disaster zone. Old tools, broken equipment, boxes of junk he'd been meaning to sort through for years. His bowling bag from the league he'd quit 3 years ago. His fishing gear that hadn't been used since our honeymoon. I'd been nagging him to clean it out for months, He'd always said, "I'll get to it eventually." Smart. Hide something in a mess nobody wants to touch. That afternoon, I put on old clothes and went into the garage. I started with the obvious places: drawers, toolboxes, behind the workbench. Nothing. I moved to the boxes on the shelves: old tax returns, instruction manuals for appliances we didn't own anymore, Brad's college textbooks. Nothing. Then I saw the bowling bag. It was shoved in the back corner, covered in dust. Brad hadn't touched it in years. I pulled it out and unzipped it. Inside, his old bowling shoes, a dirty towel, and a bottle of lane wax that had probably dried out years ago. I was about to give up when something made me pick up the left shoe. It felt heavier than it should. I turned it upside down and shook it. A piece of paper fell out. A lottery ticket. I picked it up with shaking hands. The date? October 12th. 3 days before the drawing. The numbers? 4, 17, 23, 31, 42. Mega Ball 9. I stood there in that dusty garage, holding $50 million in my hand, and I started laughing. Not happy laughter. The kind of laughter that comes when something is so absurd, so unbelievable, that your brain doesn't know how else to process it. He hid it in a bowling shoe. A bowling shoe. This idiot had won $50 million and hidden the ticket in a shoe in a bag he thought I'd never look through. I carefully placed the ticket back exactly where I'd found it, took out my phone, and photographed everything. The shoe, the ticket inside the shoe, the numbers on the ticket, the date, the location in the garage. I took 20 photos from every angle. Then I texted Patricia. Found it. Her reply came 30 seconds later. Don't touch it. Document and leave it exactly where it was. Now we wait. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. Brad called me every few days to ask if I'd signed the divorce papers yet. Each time, I had to pretend to be sad, defeated, heartbroken. I'm still processing everything, Brad. I'd say, my voice small. This is a lot. I know, Jenny. But the sooner we sign, the sooner we can both move on. Don't you want to move on? Move on. Right. Move on while he cashed a $50 million check and I got stuck with a falling apart house and $6,000 in debt. Cor, I'll sign soon, I'd say. I just need a little more time. He'd sigh, like I was being difficult. Okay. But don't take too long. I've got the paper set to file next week. Next week? He was in a hurry. Probably because lottery winners only have 180 days to claim their prize, and he wanted the divorce finalized before he claimed it. Smart. Almost. Meanwhile, Patricia was building our case. She subpoenaed our joint bank account records and found a $10 withdrawal at the Quick Stop on Riverside Avenue on October 12th, the same day Brad bought the ticket. The timestamp on the receipt was 4:47 p.m., right after Brad got off his warehouse shift. She also filed a motion to extend the discovery period in our divorce case, claiming we needed more time to ensure all assets were properly disclosed. Brad's lawyer, some cheap ambulance chaser Brad had found online, didn't object. Why would he? Brad had told him there were no assets to disclose. Everything was falling into place. All I had to do was keep pretending. 10 days after I found the ticket, Brad showed up at the house unannounced. I was in the kitchen making dinner, cheap spaghetti, the only thing I could afford, when I heard his key in the lock. "Jenny?" he called out. "You home?" My heart started pounding. "Yeah, I'm in the kitchen." He walked in with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He looked different, happier. His hair was freshly cut. He was wearing new clothes, a leather jacket I'd never seen before. "Hey," he said, setting the bag down. "I came to pick up some more of my stuff." "Okay," I said, stirring the pasta, trying to keep my hands from shaking. He stood there watching me for a moment. You look tired. Yeah, well. Working double shifts will do that. An awkward silence. Did you sign the papers yet? He asked. Not yet. I told you I need time. He sighed. Jenny, come on. What's there to think about? We're done. You know it. I know it. Just sign the papers so we can both move on with our lives. I turned to face him. Why are you in such a hurry, Brad? I'm not in a hurry. I just don't see the point in dragging this out. 7 years of marriage, and you don't see the point in taking a few weeks to think it through. His jaw tightened. What do you want from me, Jenny? What did I want? I wanted to throw the boiling pot of pasta water in his lying face. I wanted to scream that I knew about the lottery ticket. I wanted to watch him squirm. But I didn't. Instead, I turned back to the stove and said quietly, I don't want anything from you, Brad. I never did. He stood there for another moment, then grabbed his duffel bag and headed upstairs to pack more clothes. I stirred the pasta and counted to 10, forcing myself to stay calm. Just a little longer. Just let him think he's winning a little longer. Patricia called me the next morning with news. The court date is set, she said. 3 weeks from today. Final divorce hearing. He'll have to appear in person and swear under oath that his financial disclosures are complete and accurate. And that's when we show the ticket. That's when we show the ticket. But Jenny, you need to prepare yourself. When we do this, there's no going back. Brad will know you've been playing him. He's going to be furious, maybe dangerous. He's not violent, I said. Desperate people do desperate things. Especially when $50 million is involved. She was right. I knew she was right. But I'd come too far to back down now. I can handle it, I said. Okay, then we stay the course. Remember, play the victim. Let him think you're defeated. The more confident he is, the harder he'll fall. 2 days after Brad came to pack his clothes, he texted me. Need to come by Saturday to get the rest of my stuff. We'll bring someone to help. Don't worry, we'll be quick. Someone to help. Brad didn't have friends who helped with anything. His brother Mike lived 3 hours away. Who was he bringing? I texted back. Okay. Saturday morning, I woke up early and made myself presentable. Not too presentable. I needed to look defeated, exhausted, like a woman who'd given up. I wore sweatpants and an old t-shirt. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail. At 10 o'clock, I heard Brad's truck pull into the driveway. Then I heard something else. A woman's laughter. My stomach dropped. I walked to the window and looked out. Brad was getting out of the driver's seat. And from the passenger side emerged a girl who couldn't have been older than 22. Blonde hair, tight jeans, designer purse. She was laughing at something Brad said, touching his arm. He'd brought another woman, to our house. To the house we still legally shared. I watched them walk up to the front door, Brad's hand on the small of her back, and felt something cold settle in my chest. The doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, put on my best broken wife face, and opened the door. Hey, Jenny, Brad said casually, like this was completely normal. This is Tiffany. Tiffany. This is my soon-to-be ex-wife, Jenny. Tiffany gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Hi, Brad's told me so much about you. I'll bet he has. We're just here to grab a few more boxes, Brad said, already pushing past me into the house. We'll be out of your hair in 20 minutes. Tiffany followed him in, looking around our small living room like she was touring a museum of poverty. Her nose wrinkled slightly when she saw the water stain on the ceiling. I stood there in my own doorway, watching my husband and his girlfriend walk through my house, and forced myself to stay calm. Patricia's voice echoed in my head. Play the victim. Let him think you're defeated. Can I get you guys anything? I heard myself say. Water? Coffee? Brad turned around, surprised. Sure. Coffee would be great. Me too, Tiffany chirped. 2 sugars, no cream. Of course. I went into the kitchen and made coffee with shaking hands. Through the doorway, I could hear them upstairs in what used to be our bedroom. God, this place is so small, Tiffany said, not bothering to lower her voice. How did you guys live here? It was temporary, Brad said. I've got bigger plans now. I know, baby. That's why I'm so excited for us. Us. There was already an us. I poured the coffee into 2 mugs, the good ones, the ones from our wedding registry, and carried them upstairs. Brad was packing clothes into a box. Tiffany was sitting on our bed, on my side, scrolling through her phone. Coffee, I said, setting the mugs on the dresser. Thanks, Brad said without looking at me. Tiffany glanced up. You're sweet. I can see why Brad stayed with you for so long. The condescension in her voice was crystal clear. She thought I was pathetic, a doormat, someone to be pitied. She had no idea what was coming. Yeah, well, I said quietly. I tried my best. Brad threw a few more shirts into the box. Jenny, I was thinking, the court date is in 3 weeks. If you just sign the papers now, we can cancel the hearing and save everyone a lot of time and money. I told you, I need to think about it. He stood up, frustration flashing across his face. Think about what? What is there to think about? I'm giving you everything. The house, the car, half the debt. You're getting a good deal here. A good deal. Half of negative equity and $6,000 in debt while he walked away with $50 million. I just want to make sure I'm making the right decision, I said. Tiffany looked up from her phone. Babe, maybe she needs a lawyer to explain it to her. Some people need things spelled out, you know? Babe. She called him babe. In front of me. Brad softened his tone. Look, Jenny, I know this is hard. But holding on to something that's already over isn't going to make you feel better. Sometimes you just have to let go. Let go. He wanted me to let go. I nodded slowly. You're right. Maybe I do need to just let go. His face brightened. Exactly. So you'll sign? I'll think about it. The frustration came back. Jesus, Jenny. I said I'll think about it. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Tiffany's eyebrows shot up. Brad held up his hands. Okay, you think about it. But the hearing is in 3 weeks whether you sign or not. So if you want to avoid the whole court thing, you need to decide soon. They finished packing and left 20 minutes later. I watched from the window as Brad loaded boxes into his truck. Tiffany stood next to him, her hand in his back pocket, already acting like she owned him. As they drove away, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Please tell me you didn't murder them both. I'd called her last night and told her about Tiffany. I texted back. Still alive, barely. You're stronger than me. I would have thrown the coffee in her face. Trust me, I wanted to. 3 more weeks. You can do this. 3 more weeks. Then Brad would stand in front of a judge and lie under oath, and I would destroy him. The following Monday, Brad called me. I was at work, in the middle of the lunch rush, when my phone rang. Hey, it's me, he said when I answered. You got a minute? I'm at work, Brad. What do you need? I wanted to talk about the house. I've been thinking, and I realized I'm being too generous. I mean, you didn't contribute much to the down payment, and I've been paying most of the mortgage. My jaw dropped. Are you kidding me right now? I'm just saying, maybe we should revisit who gets what. It's only fair. Fair. The man hiding $50 million wanted to talk about fair. The papers are already filed. Brad, you said I could have the house. I know, but I talked to my lawyer and he said we could amend the agreement before the hearing. Of course he did. Now that Brad thought I was going to drag things out, he wanted to squeeze me even more. So what are you proposing? I asked, my voice tight. We sell the house, split whatever's left after the mortgage. You take your half of the debt, I take mine. Clean break. So I get nothing. You get your freedom, Jenny. Isn't that worth something? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him I knew about the ticket, that I knew about his plan, that in 3 weeks he was going to lose everything. But I didn't. Instead, I said, let me talk to a lawyer. You don't need a lawyer for this. It's simple. Brad, if you want to change the agreement, I'm talking to a lawyer. That's final. He sighed. Fine, but don't take too long. The hearing is in 2.5 weeks. He hung up. I stood in the kitchen of Romano's diner, surrounded by dirty plates and shouting cooks, and felt something inside me harden even more. He wasn't just trying to hide the money. He was trying to take everything from me. Even the scraps he'd originally offered. Patricia was right. Desperate people do desperate things. That night, I called Patricia and told her about Brad's call. He's getting nervous, she said. He thought you'd sign immediately, and now that you haven't, he's worried you might be onto him. So what do I do? Nothing. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to any changes. Let him sweat. The more nervous he gets, the more mistakes he'll make. What if he tries to claim the lottery money before the hearing? He can't. If he claims it now, it'll show up in financial records and he'll have to disclose it. He's trapped. He has to wait until after the divorce is finalized to claim it safely, and we're not giving him that chance. The next week was torture. Brad called me every day, sometimes twice a day. Each call was the same. Him trying to convince me to sign, to agree to new terms, to just let him go. Jenny, I don't understand why you're making this so difficult. I'm not making it difficult, Brad. I'm making sure I don't get screwed over. Screwed over? I'm giving you the house. A house worth less than we owe on it. Thanks for the generous gift. Then let's sell it. Split the proceeds. There are no proceeds, Brad. We're underwater on the mortgage. Fine, then you take the house and I walk away clean. That's more than fair. It was almost funny, watching him tie himself in knots. One day he wanted to change the agreement. The next day he wanted to keep it the same. He couldn't keep his story straight because he was too busy trying to figure out how to escape with his lottery winnings. Meanwhile, Tiffany started texting me. The first text came on Tuesday. Hey Jenny, it's Tiffany. Brad gave me your number. I just wanted to reach out woman to woman. I know this must be hard for you, but I really care about Brad. And I think if you cared about him too, you'd let him move on. He's really stressed out about all this. I stared at the text in disbelief. This girl was texting me to tell me to divorce her boyfriend faster. I didn't respond. She texted again on Wednesday. I'm not trying to be rude, but dragging this out isn't good for anyone. Brad says you're being stubborn about signing. Is it money? Because if it's about money, Brad's a good guy. He'll make sure you're taken care of. He'll make sure I'm taken care of. With what? The house that's falling apart? I still didn't respond. On Thursday, she called me. Actually called. I answered. Hello? Jenny? Oh, good. I wasn't sure you'd pick up. Listen, I just think we should talk. You know, girl to girl. Tiffany, I interrupted. I appreciate that you're trying to help, but this is between me and Brad. You're not part of this. Well, actually, I kind of am now. Brad and I are together, and you're together with a married man. That doesn't make you part of the divorce. There was a pause. You don't have to be bitchy about it. I'm not being bitchy. I'm being clear. Stay out of my divorce. I hung up. She didn't text or call again after that. 10 days before the hearing, Brad showed up at the house again. It was almost midnight. I was in bed when I heard pounding on the front door. Jenny, open up. I grabbed my phone and went downstairs. Through the peephole, I could see Brad on the porch. He looked agitated, drunk, maybe. Brad, it's midnight. What do you want? I need to talk to you. Open the door. Are you drunk? Just open the door. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Brad stumbled in, smelling like whiskey. This is ridiculous, Jenny. Ridiculous. He waved his arms. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Following the legal process you started? You know what I mean. Why won't you just sign? What do you want from me? I want a fair divorce. It is fair. I'm giving you everything. Then why do you care if I take 3 weeks to think about it? He stared at me, his face red. Because I want to move on. I want to start my life over. With Tiffany. Yes, with Tiffany. She actually makes me happy, Jenny. She doesn't nag me about money or work or cleaning the goddamn garage. No, she just wants your money. He laughed bitterly. What money? You think I have money? Look at me. I work in a warehouse. I drive a 10-year-old truck. What money could she possibly want? I almost said it. Almost. The words were right there on the tip of my tongue. The $50 million you're hiding, you lying piece of... But I caught myself. I don't know, Brad. You tell me. He ran his hands through his hair. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep waiting for you to sign papers that say what we both already know. We're done. We've been done for years. Just... please. Sign the papers. For a moment, standing there in my living room at midnight, I almost felt sorry for him. He looked desperate. Trapped. Good. I'll see you in court, I said quietly. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out without another word. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, going over everything in my head. The ticket was still in Brad's bowling shoe. I'd checked 3 days ago. Patricia had all the documentation, the bank records, the photographs, the timeline. Tomorrow, Brad would walk into that courtroom thinking he'd won, thinking that even if I didn't sign, the worst that would happen is we'd split everything 50-50 and he'd still walk away with $25 million. He had no idea what was waiting for him. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. You ready for tomorrow? As ready as I'll ever be. You're going to destroy him. I'm so proud of you. I just want what's fair. Fair? Jenny, you're going to take everything. That's not fair. That's justice. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was justice. All I knew was that tomorrow, Brad was going to stand in front of a judge and lie. And I was going to make him pay for every lie, every betrayal, every moment he'd looked me in the eye and pretended to be someone he wasn't. I finally fell asleep around 3 a.m. When I woke up at 7, I put on my white suit, the one I'd bought specifically for this moment, and looked at myself in the mirror. Today was the day. Today, Brad was going to lose everything, and I was going to watch. The courthouse was busier than I expected. People in suits rushed past carrying briefcases, lawyers huddled in corners with their clients. The smell of bad coffee hung in the air. I sat on a wooden bench outside courtroom 3B, my hands folded in my lap, trying to look calm. Inside, my heart was hammering so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Patricia sat next to me, reviewing her notes one last time. She was wearing a sharp gray suit and her game face, the one that said she was ready for war. "Remember," she said quietly, not looking up from her papers. "Let him talk first. Let him commit to his lies. Don't react. Don't interrupt. Just wait for my signal." "I know," I whispered. "And Jenny?" She looked at me. "Whatever happens in there, keep your composure. Don't give him the satisfaction of seeing you break." I nodded. Down the hall, I heard voices. Male voices. Brad's voice. He appeared around the corner with his lawyer, a short, balding man in an ill-fitting suit named Dennis Kruger. Brad was wearing the only suit he owned, the one he'd worn to his grandfather's funeral 3 years ago. It was slightly too tight now, but what made my stomach turn was who was with him. Tiffany. She was dressed like she was going to a nightclub, not a courthouse. Tight red dress, heels, too much makeup. She clung to Brad's arm like a barnacle. They saw me and stopped. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the hallway. Brad's face was unreadable. Tiffany smirked. Then Brad said something to his lawyer and they walked into the courtroom. Tiffany followed, throwing me one last look over her shoulder, a look that said, "I won." "Oh, sweetie, you have no idea what's about to happen." Patricia stood up. Showtime. Courtroom 3B was smaller than I'd imagined, wood paneling on the walls, the state seal hanging behind the judge's bench, fluorescent lights that hummed. Brad sat at the defendant's table with his lawyer. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Patricia. There was maybe 15 feet between us, but it felt like a mile. Tiffany sat in the gallery behind Brad, phone in hand, probably texting her friends about how she was at her boyfriend's divorce hearing. The bailiff stood up. "All rise," the Honorable Judge Rebecca Morrison presiding. We all stood as Judge Morrison entered. She was a black woman in her early 60s with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had the kind of face that had seen every lie, every scheme, every desperate con that had ever walked through her courtroom. She sat down, adjusted her glasses, and looked at the papers in front of her. "Please be seated," the bailiff said. We sat. Judge Morrison glanced up. "Case number 2024 DR 8847. Jenny Elizabeth Carter versus Bradley James Morrison. Final divorce hearing." She looked at Brad's lawyer. "Mr. Kruger, your client filed for this divorce." "We're here to finalize the division of assets and dissolve the marriage. Is that correct?" Dennis Kruger stood up. "Yes, Your Honor." "And both parties have submitted financial disclosure forms?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mrs. Carter, you're represented by Patricia Chen." Patricia stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "Good." Judge Morrison looked down at the papers again. "I've reviewed both disclosure forms. It appears this is a fairly straightforward case. Limited assets, some debt, no children. Mr. Morrison is proposing to give the marital home and vehicle to Mrs. Carter while taking on half the marital debt. Mrs. Carter, do you agree to these terms?" This was it. The moment. Patricia stood. "Your Honor, my client has concerns about the completeness of Mr. Morrison's financial disclosure." Brad's lawyer jumped up. "Your Honor, my client has disclosed everything." Judge Morrison held up her hand. "Mr. Kruger, sit down. Ms. Chen, what are these concerns?" "Your Honor, we have reason to believe Mr. Morrison has failed to disclose a significant asset acquired during the marriage." Brad's face went pale. His lawyer looked confused. "What asset?" the judge asked. "A lottery ticket, Your Honor, purchased with marital funds, worth approximately $50 million. The courtroom went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Brad's lawyer turned to Brad. What is she talking about? Brad shook his head. I don't know what she's talking about. I didn't win any lottery. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Ms. Chen, do you have evidence to support this claim? Yes, Your Honor, substantial evidence. Then I'd like to see it, but first… She looked at Brad. Mr. Morrison, please stand. Brad stood up slowly. He looked like he might throw up. Mr. Morrison, you submitted a financial disclosure form to this court under penalty of perjury. In that form, you listed your assets as one vehicle, various household items, and your portion of the marital home. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. And you signed that form under oath, swearing that it was complete and accurate. Brad hesitated. Just for a second. Yes. So you're telling me under oath right now that you have disclosed all assets acquired during your marriage? Brad's lawyer whispered something to him. Brad nodded. Yes, Your Honor, I've disclosed everything. Judge Morrison looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Patricia. Ms. Chen, your evidence? Patricia opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. Your Honor, I'd like to submit several pieces of evidence. First, bank records showing a $10 withdrawal from the defendant's joint checking account on October 12, 2024, at the Quick Stop on Riverside Avenue. She walked to the judge's bench and handed over the documents. The judge reviewed them. Second, a photograph of a lottery ticket found in the defendant's possession, showing numbers that match the winning numbers for the Mega Millions jackpot drawn on October 15, 2024. The jackpot was $50 million. She handed over the photographs. I watched Brad's face as he realized what was happening. The color drained completely. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. Third, phone records showing that the defendant made several calls to the State Lottery Commission in the days following the drawing. More documents. And finally, Your Honor, testimony from my client about conversations she overheard in which the defendant discussed hiding assets from her during the divorce. Judge Morrison reviewed everything in silence. The only sound in the courtroom was pages turning and Brad's heavy breathing. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Morrison, I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you possess a winning lottery ticket worth $50 million? Brad's lawyer leaned over and whispered frantically in his ear. Brad shook his head. He was sweating now, big drops running down his temples. Your Honor, I can explain. That's not what I asked. Do you possess a winning lottery ticket? I bought a ticket, yes, but did that ticket win? Silence. Mr. Morrison, answer the question. Brad looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time since we'd entered the courtroom. His eyes were pleading, desperate. I stared back with no expression at all. Yes, he finally whispered. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Yes, he said louder. Yes, I won, but it's not what it looks like. Judge Morrison removed her glasses. Then what is it, Mr. Morrison? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you won $50 million. Hid that fact from your wife, filed for divorce to avoid sharing that money, and then committed perjury in my courtroom by swearing under oath that you disclosed all your assets. I was going to tell her. I needed time to figure things out. Time to figure things out? Or time to finalize the divorce before claiming the prize? Brad's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, if I may, Mr. Kruger, sit down. Your client just admitted to lying to this court. Unless you can provide a compelling reason why I shouldn't hold him in contempt right now, I suggest you remain silent. The lawyer sat down, his face red. Judge Morrison put her glasses back on. Ms. Chen, what is your client seeking? Patricia stood. Your Honor, under state law, when one party deliberately conceals assets during divorce proceedings, the court has the authority to award the concealed assets entirely to the wronged party as a penalty for fraud. We're asking for exactly that. We're asking the court to award 100% of the lottery winnings to Mrs. Carter. Your Honor, that's excessive, Brad's lawyer tried. Excessive? Judge Morrison's voice was ice. Your client lied to his wife, lied to this court, and attempted to defraud his spouse out of $50 million. Ms. Chen's request seems entirely appropriate. She looked at Brad with pure disgust. Mr. Morrison, let me make sure I understand the sequence of events. You purchased a lottery ticket with marital funds. That ticket won $50 million. Instead of celebrating with your wife, instead of being honest, you hid the ticket, filed for divorce, offered your wife a house with negative equity and some debt, essentially nothing, and then came into my courtroom and swore under oath that you had no other assets. Is that accurate? Brad said nothing. I'll take your silence as confirmation. She wrote something on her notepad. Mr. Morrison, you've committed fraud against your spouse and perjury in this court. I'm awarding the entirety of the lottery winnings, all $50 million, to Mrs. Jenny Carter. You'll leave this marriage with exactly what you tried to give her. Nothing. What? Brad shouted. You can't do that. That's my ticket. I bought it. With marital funds, Mr. Morrison, which means it's marital property, and because you deliberately concealed it and lied to this court, you've forfeited any claim to it. Brad lunged toward the judge's bench. That's not fair. That money is mine. Two bailiffs immediately grabbed him. Brad struggled against them, shouting, It's mine. She didn't do anything. I'm the one who bought the ticket. I'm the one who won. You can't just give it all to her. Judge Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. Mr. Morrison, if you don't calm down immediately, I'll add contempt of court to your list of problems. Bailiffs, remove him. They dragged Brad toward the door. He was still shouting, his face purple with rage. This is bullshit. She's a gold digger. She doesn't deserve that money. I won it. Me. Tiffany jumped up from the gallery. Baby, Brad. She tried to follow him, but a bailiff blocked her path. The doors closed, cutting off Brad's screaming. The courtroom was silent again. Judge Morrison looked at me. For the first time since the hearing started, I saw something that might have been a smile. Mrs. Carter, I'm also granting you a full divorce from Mr. Morrison, effective immediately. You're no longer married to that man. Congratulations, and good luck. Thank you, Your Honor, I managed to say. Ms. Chen, draft the final order and submit it to my clerk by end of day. Make sure it includes provisions preventing Mr. Morrison from claiming the lottery prize and transferring all rights to Mrs. Carter. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Morrison gathered her papers. And one more thing, Mrs. Carter. Yes, Your Honor. Buy yourself something nice. You've earned it. She stood up, and the bailiff called out, All rise! As Judge Morrison left the courtroom, I stood there in my white suit, my hands shaking, barely able to process what had just happened. I'd won, not just half, not just a fair split. Everything. Patricia put her hand on my shoulder. Congratulations, Jenny. You just became very rich. Behind us, Tiffany was crying in the gallery, mascara running down her face. She'd come to watch her boyfriend finalize his divorce so they could start their millionaire life together. Instead, she'd watched him lose everything. I turned to look at her. Our eyes met. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just looked at her until she grabbed her purse and ran out of the courtroom. Then I let myself breathe. In the hallway outside, Patricia was already on the phone with the lottery commission, making arrangements for me to claim the prize. I stood by the window, looking out at the parking lot, when I saw them, Brad and Tiffany. He was standing next to his truck, his hands on his knees, looking like he might pass out. Tiffany stood a few feet away, her arms crossed. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could read the body language. She was yelling at him. He was trying to explain. She kept shaking her head. Finally, she threw her hands up, turned around and walked away, got into a cab that had been waiting and drove off without looking back. Brad watched her go. Then he slumped against his truck and put his head in his hands. I stood there watching him have his breakdown in a courthouse parking lot and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, no anger, just nothing. He'd made his choice. He'd chosen greed over love, lies over truth, $50 million over 7 years of marriage, and he'd lost everything. Patricia came up beside me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." "The Lottery Commission wants to meet tomorrow to process the claim. Are you ready for that?" "More than ready," she smiled. "Good, because by this time tomorrow, you're going to have $50 million in your bank account." $50 million. I'd started this day as a broke waitress in a failing marriage. I was ending it as a divorced millionaire. Life is funny sometimes. The next morning, I walked into the State Lottery Commission office wearing the same white suit. Patricia was with me, along with a financial advisor she'd recommended, a sharp woman named Michelle who specialized in sudden wealth management. The lottery commissioner, a friendly man in his 50s named Robert Chen, greeted us with a warm handshake. "Mrs. Carter, congratulations. We've reviewed the court order from Judge Morrison. Everything is in order. You're the legal owner of the October 15th Mega Millions jackpot. $50 million. $50 million. Even after hearing it a dozen times, it still didn't feel real. Now," Robert continued, sitting down behind his desk, "you have two options for receiving your winnings. You can take the lump sum, which after taxes comes to approximately $27 million. Or you can take the annuity, which pays out the full $50 million over 30 years. Michelle leaned forward. "I recommend the lump sum." With proper investment and financial planning, you'll end up with significantly more than $50 million in 30 years. I nodded. "Lump sum." "Excellent choice," Robert said, sliding papers across his desk. "I'll need you to sign here, here, and here." My hand shook as I signed $27 million. In one signature? "The funds will be transferred to your designated account within 5 business days," Robert said. In the meantime, I'd recommend keeping a low profile. Lottery winners often attract unwanted attention. "Don't worry," I said. "I'm not planning on telling anyone. Well, anyone except Sarah. She'd kill me if I didn't tell her." 5 days later, I checked my bank account on my phone. Balance: $27,483,926. 14. I stared at the number for a solid minute, refreshing the screen 3 times to make sure it was real. It was real. I was a millionaire. The first thing I did was cry. Just sat on my couch in that falling-apart house and sobbed. 7 years of working double shifts, of scraping by, of watching every penny, of drowning in debt while Brad played video games and complained about being tired. All of it was over. The second thing I did was call Sarah. "Hey, you busy?" I asked when she picked up. "Never too busy for you. What's up?" "Check your bank account." "What?" "Why?" "Just check it." I heard rustling, then a gasp. "Jenny, what the?" There's $50,000 in my account. You helped me get through the hardest time of my life, I said. That's just a thank you. Jenny, I can't accept this. Too late. It's already there. Buy yourself something nice. She was crying now. You're insane. You're absolutely insane, and I love you. Love you too. The third thing I did was pay off every single debt Brad and I had accumulated. Credit cards, 11 247s, paid in full. Medical bills, 391, paid in full. The mortgage on the house, $89,000, paid in full. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, clicking pay in full on each account, watching the balances drop to zero. It was the most satisfying thing I'd ever done in my life. The house was mine now. Completely mine. No bank, no debt, no Brad, but I didn't want to live there anymore. Too many bad memories. Too many nights lying awake worrying about money. Too many days watching Brad waste his life on that couch. So I hired a contractor to fix everything. New roof, new water heater, new floors, fresh paint, modern kitchen, updated bathroom. It took 3 months and cost $85,000. But when it was done, the house looked completely different. Like a real home instead of a constant reminder of struggle. Then I put it on the market. It sold in 2 weeks for $220,000. More than double what Brad thought it was worth. I bought a new place across town. Nothing crazy. A modest 3-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood with good schools. Not because I had kids, but because I was thinking about the future, about stability, about building something real. I furnished it simply. No designer furniture, no luxury brands. Just comfortable pieces that felt like home. In the living room, I hung a single frame on the wall. Inside was the lottery ticket. The actual ticket, preserved behind glass. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder that greed destroys everything it touches, that lies always catch up with you, that karma is real and patient. I kept my job at Romano's Diner for 6 more months, not because I needed the money, but because those people had been my family when I had nothing. Maria, the cook who always made sure I ate during my shift. Tom, the manager who let me pick up extra hours when I needed them. The regular customers who left generous tips because they knew I was struggling. I couldn't just abandon them, but I also couldn't keep lying about why I suddenly seemed so light, so unburdened. So one day I sat down with Tom and told him everything. The lottery, the divorce, Brad's lies, the courtroom. He listened without interrupting, his eyes getting wider and wider. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he started laughing. Deep, belly laughs that shook his whole body. That cheating bastard hid it in a bowling shoe, he wheezed. A bowling shoe? Yep. And you just waited? You let him think he'd won? Had to let him lie under oath. Otherwise, I'd only get half. He shook his head in amazement. Jenny Carter, you are one smart woman. Remind me to never cross you. 2 weeks later, I gave my notice, but not before making sure everyone at Romano's got a generous bonus. $10,000 each for the full-time staff, $5,000 for part-timers. Tom tried to refuse his, Jenny, you don't have to do this. I know, I want to. You gave me work when I needed it. You treated me with dignity. This is just paying it forward. On my last day, they threw me a party. Cake, balloons, the works. Maria cried and hugged me for 5 full minutes. You were always too good for that man, she said in my ear. I'm glad you got everything. I donated $2 million to various charities, women's shelters, food banks, organizations that helped people escape abusive relationships, because I understood now. What Brad did, hiding money, lying, trying to leave me with nothing, that was financial abuse. I'd been lucky. I'd found the ticket. But how many other women were trapped in situations like that with no way out? If my money could help even a few of them, it was worth it. 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Brad's brother Mike at the grocery store. "Jenny," he said, looking surprised. "I heard about everything. How are you doing?" "I'm good, Mike. Really good. How's Brad?" Mike's face fell. "Not great, if I'm being honest. He's living with my parents now. Can't find work because of the perjury charge on his record. Tiffany dumped him the day of the hearing. Last I heard, he was working nights at a gas station." A gas station. The same kind of place where he'd bought the lottery ticket that ruined his life. I should have felt satisfaction. Maybe even joy. But I didn't. I just felt tired. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. "Are you really?" Mike asked. "I mean, after what he did to you. I'm sorry that he made the choices he made. I'm sorry he threw away 7 years for money. I'm sorry he let greed turn him into someone I didn't recognize. But I'm not sorry about what happened in that courtroom. He earned that." Mike nodded slowly. Yeah, he did." He paused. "For what it's worth, I always liked you. You were too good for him." "Thanks, Mike." We said goodbye and I finished my shopping. As I loaded groceries into my car, a sensible Honda, nothing flashy, I thought about Brad at that gas station, working night shifts, just like I used to, living with his parents, starting over with nothing, the life he'd tried to force on me, he'd ended up giving to himself. A year after the divorce, I started a small business. Nothing big, a consulting firm helping people manage sudden wealth, lottery winners, inheritance recipients, people who sold businesses. Because I'd learned something important in those first months after winning. Having money doesn't automatically make you happy or wise. You need guidance, support, someone who understands what you're going through. I hired Michelle, my financial advisor, as a partner. Together, we helped over 50 clients in the first year navigate their new reality without making the mistakes Brad had made, without letting greed destroy their lives. It wasn't about the money, I had more than enough. It was about purpose, about taking something terrible and turning it into something good. 2 years after the divorce, I was having coffee on my back porch when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Jenny, it's Brad." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard his voice in 2 years. "Brad, what do you want?" He sighed. "I don't want anything. I wanted to call and say I'm sorry for everything. For lying, for hiding the ticket, for treating you the way I did. You deserved better." I was quiet for a moment. Yes, I did. "I know this doesn't fix anything. I know you probably hate me. I don't hate you, Brad. I don't feel anything about you at all anymore. You're just someone I used to know." Another pause. "Right. Okay. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. And that I'm glad you won. I mean it. You deserve that money more than I ever did." "I didn't deserve it because of the money, Brad. I deserved it because I was honest. Because I didn't lie and cheat and try to steal from my partner. That's the difference between us." I know that now." His voice cracked. "I lost everything. Jenny, everything. And it's nobody's fault but mine." "No, it's not. Anyway, I won't bother you again. I just wanted to say that. Goodbye, Jenny." "Goodbye, Brad." I hung up and sat there for a long time, watching the sun set over my backyard. He'd finally learned his lesson. 2 years and countless consequences later, he'd finally understood what he'd done. But it didn't change anything. Some lessons come too late. 3 years after the divorce, I met someone. His name was David. He was a high school teacher, history and civics. Kind eyes, genuine smile, terrible jokes that made me laugh anyway. We met at a charity event I was hosting for my business. He was there with his students, volunteering. He had no idea who I was, no idea about the lottery, the divorce, any of it. He just thought I was someone who ran a financial consulting firm. On our third date, I told him everything. I expected him to be impressed, or intimidated, or to suddenly start acting differently. Instead, he just said, "That must have been really hard. I'm sorry you had to go through that." Not, "Wow, you're rich." Not, "Can I borrow money?" Not any of the things I'd been afraid of hearing. Just empathy. Just understanding. That's when I knew he was different. I never remarried. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't. But I'm happy. Genuinely, deeply happy in a way I never was with Brad. I have a beautiful home, a meaningful career. Friends who love me for who I am, not what I have. Security, peace, freedom. And every morning, when I wake up in my comfortable bed in my quiet house, I think about that night in the garage when I found the lottery ticket in Brad's bowling shoe. The night everything changed. Not because I found the ticket, but because I found something more valuable. I found my strength. I found my voice. I found out what I was capable of when I stopped playing the victim and started fighting back. Brad thought he'd won the lottery that night, but he was wrong. I did. Not $50 million. Something better. I won my life back. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if Brad ever thinks about that bowling shoe. About how a $10 lottery ticket and a moment of greed cost him $50 million, and the only person who ever really loved him. I wonder if he lies awake thinking about what could have been, if we'd won together, if he'd been honest, if he'd chosen us over the money. But then I remember, Brad didn't just choose money over me. He chose money over his own integrity, his own character, his own soul. And that's why he lost everything. Not because of a vindictive ex-wife or a harsh judge or bad luck, but because greed is its own punishment. The lottery was just the mirror that showed him who he really was. And when he looked in that mirror, he didn't like what he saw. That's the real tragedy of Brad's story. Not that he lost $50 million, but that he finally became rich enough to afford his true self and discovered it was worthless. My name is Jenny Carter. I was married to a man who won $50 million and tried to steal my future. But I found his ticket. I found my strength. And I won everything, not just the money, but my dignity, my freedom, my life. If you're in a relationship where someone makes you feel small, where someone lies to you, where someone treats you like you're not worth fighting for, leave. Because you deserve better. You deserve someone who celebrates with you, not someone who hides from you. You deserve someone who sees you as a partner, not as an obstacle to their greed. You deserve your own kind of lottery win. And sometimes that win looks like walking away from someone who would hide a ticket in a bowling shoe instead of building a future with you. He bet on greed, and he lost the jackpot of life. Meanwhile, I'm living proof that the truth always wins in the end. And karma always collects, always. If this story reminded you that justice exists, that standing up for yourself matters, and that greed always loses in the end, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're worth fighting for. And remember, the best revenge isn't getting even, it's living well. Thanks for listening to my story. I'm Jenny Carter, and this is how I won $50 million by losing a husband who was never worth keeping. See you in the next one.